Hi, everyone. Welcome back to What's Your Process? I'm here today with Katie Penner, the gifting queen. And Katie, let's just jump right in. What do people need to know about you?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Second, I am the head of Sender Relations at Sendoso, which is a gifting platform. And I own our internal BDR program. I work a lot with Clay and scaled outbound. And really, I'm just super passionate about humanizing business. So that's why I think that I fit so well into what we do here at Sendoso. But beyond my kind of 9 to 5, in my 5 to 9, I am a mom of two. I have a daughter, Riley, who is 8, and a son, Archie, who's 2. And I also have 2 dogs. So that occupies all of my time. And I love being a mom. So that is me in a nutshell.
I'm a father of 3, so I feel you on that side of things. It's maybe the real job. It's the best job, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
You also have a very active social activity. Your LinkedIn is on fire. You're always at different events and conferences. So it's really cool. I feel like I see you everywhere. And it's always very pleasant when I do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, my LinkedIn journey did not start until a little over a year ago. And it's actually funny because it was when my son Archie, he's 2 now, he just turned 2 recently.
Happy
But
birthday, Archie.
he stayed home with me for a very long time. In fact, I am currently sitting in what used to be our formal dining room that I turned into an office/playroom so I could work and he could play. It actually all started on LinkedIn when my co-founder Braden Young was like, look, you should post on LinkedIn about how the hell you're doing this. So I just transparently recorded a video with Archie on my lap talking about how I how I did it. And that video kind of blew up. And then I met a ton of great people on LinkedIn and decided to just continue sharing my journey. And it's been really rewarding. So if you're listening and not posting on LinkedIn yet, you should do it.
I feel comfortable speaking for everyone, obviously. Thank you, because it's awesome. And I know I definitely enjoy everything you're posting. So
Thank you.
highly recommend the follow there as well for everyone. But Katie, I want to know, what is one thing you're world class at?
Ooh, I am world class at helping companies implement a gifting strategy that helps them double their win rates, 6x their second call rates, and close deals 29% faster.
Those are some metrics. I love that you just had those too. Like, you were just ready to go.
It's in the brain bank. You got to know your stats,
100%. Gifting, I think, it's obviously not a new thing. We've all been doing it for a very long time, but within the business context, I feel like it's picked up steam more recently, aside from the holiday gift basket thing.
Yeah.
So, to hear those kinds of numbers and those kinds of metrics is really impressive. And I'd love to walk through your process for how you do it. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's do it.
Where do we start?
Yeah, I think the first thing, right, is targeting. In any kind of process, the right kind of targeting and reaching out to the right person is always going to be step number 1. Understanding them as well, I think, is a massive part of gifting success. So the way that I kind of enable our customer teams on understanding their audience once they've done that targeting piece is breaking them down into 3 or 4 kind of categories for messaging. And the first category that I like to bring up is Skip Miller's ATL BTL concept. So, is your buyer an above the line buyer or a below the line buyer? And the way that Skip kind of broke this down and explained this is that your VP plus buyers, they don't really care about the features and benefits of what they're buying because they aren't a user buyer, right? They want to prove ROI on the software that they're buying. They care about ROI specifically. So your messaging should cater to that. They don't care about your feature and benefit dumping. Whereas a BTL buyer, typically the director below, they do care about those features and benefits, right? It's going to be them or their teams using your product. So focusing on the things that are going to make their day-to-day lives easier is going to ultimately win them over, right? It's addressing some sort of pain point that they may be dealing with. Then we also look at intent. So a lot of companies are leveraging intent scores, whether that be through a tool like 6 Sense, Demand Base, Ample Market. There's so many tools out there, right, that can leverage intent. So you look at the intent scores, and the higher the intent score, the more likely it is that they are not just looking at you, but also one or a few of your competitors, right? So differentiation is really important there. And then the lower the intent score, the more education you need to do. Why should this matter to them? What other companies in their space are leveraging a tool like this? How can it even be used? At what stage, right? So educating them to make them start to think about how they can integrate something like your product and their services. And then finally, breaking down by their specific job responsibilities or industries and making sure that you're speaking their language and actually speaking to something that is relevant to them. Once you've kind of crafted that email and, realized all of those points, obviously with gifting, it's doing your research, right? I think the more personalized a gift, the better. The value doesn't matter. And I think that this is kind of a misconception with gifting is that A, it's bribey. We'll get to that in a minute. And B, it has to be expensive to resonate. The best gift that I've sent recently was to a CRO who's attending a Taylor Swift concert. And I asked him if he or his wife have started to make friendship bracelets to hand out. They had not yet. So I sent him an $8 friendship bracelet making kit from Amazon. And it landed really, really well because it was thoughtful and it was relevant to him. And it provided a date night experience for him and his wife to sit down, have a glass of wine, and make these bracelets together. So do that research, grasp onto something from their social, whatever. And then at that point, you are ready to gift. And
can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
please.
One, just as a statement, I love that you did that because as individuals, we just all want to be heard. And the fact that you're not there let me figure out how to get you a drink experience or, the more obvious kind of things and more like this is part of the experience. This is what everyone in that, arena is going to be doing and thinking about is, I think, really cool and really beneficial and something that listeners and viewers and whatnot should absolutely keep in mind. Just, listen. It's really important to listen.
Yeah.
But the other point you were just making, check out socials and whatnot, how do you straddle that line between being informed and paying attention to maybe a little overly informed or a little too close to comfort?
Yeah, I love this question. So I think that anything on LinkedIn is fair game, right? LinkedIn is a professional platform. So, I always, whenever I'm going to gift someone, I will go to someone's profile and typically click on images and see all the pictures that they posted. And that typically, if they're active, that'll give me an idea of, do they have kids? Do they have a family? Should I send a family friendly gift? Or did they post about their trip to Oktoberfest? Are they a beer person? It gives me some sort of idea. If I don't find anything there, I scroll through the post. Now, I think where you kind of avoid the line into creep city is by not going onto someone's personal socials. So things like Instagram, Snapchat, I don't even know. I don't have social outside of LinkedIn, but you don't want to go to someone's Instagram or Facebook, or I'm going to age myself here, MySpace isn't even a thing anymore, but you get my point. You don't want to cross that line. So LinkedIn or Google their name plus their company name. And sometimes you'll find really great interviews like this one, right? Where you're asking about me as a person. I just shared that I'm a mom, etc. You can watch those things and get some insights there as well.
Okay, very cool. That's super helpful. Creep City, population 0. Let's keep it that way. So I did cut you off. And so you were talking about research overall, right? So you find out what's relevant, right? Based on the homework that you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And this, just to kind of go back to the process thing for 1 second, right? You found your target. I don't know if there's a better way to say that, but you found the person that you want to send a gift to. Now you're researching them, right? You're trying to find out how to send something that's relevant. And, you had touched on the fact that it also doesn't have to be very expensive. So is there something there in regards to just, I'm sure there are people who prefer the value, right? They want that expensive bottle of something, or they want, that, I don't know, vision headset, whatever it might be. Have you found from the research standpoint and I don't want to skip too far ahead, but when they do get the gifts, doing better research and not necessarily always spending more money ends up with a better experience and better result?
Yeah, absolutely. So to address the first part of this, right, which is price. So we ran a ton of reports on our customers' data and their send data, and we found that the average gift costs around $50, and that for every dollar spent on a gift, the return is 4. As far as the ROI, right, it's proven, and we see that gifts don't have to cost a lot, and they don't on average across our customer base. I will say that in my personal experience gifting for the past 3.5 years, I have noticed that the more personalized the gift, the better the response and the stickier that prospect is throughout the sales cycle, right? Because at that point, and going back to something that you mentioned earlier, is people want to be treated like people. And for some reason, we have completely kind of fallen away from that, right? With the rise of AI, we're sending automated, personalized emails. I mean, people are being blasted. And quite frankly, moving from an SDR in 2021 to where I am today, I got to very quickly kind of transfer from an IC role into a buying role. And I got to see firsthand how many people just treated me like a wallet and never really wanted to earn the right to ask for a meeting with me. When we're able to do that with a gift, it kind of changes the scales and makes us stand out. But also, buyers are way more trusting because I am doing my research on not just you, but on your company as well. I'm telling you about a solution that can genuinely help you. And I'm also showing you that I've done my research on you as a human being, right? So it's just this added layer of care that I think everyone wants to see in every buying cycle that they're a part of.
That's really interesting, right? Where the quality of the gift, and I mean that from a like human standpoint rather than like the price or the label or whatever that's on it. The quality of the gift indicates actually what goes on behind the scenes and who you're dealing with and how they think about not just like you and your business, but probably their entire business model. Like if they're just sending you a generic something that they send to everyone else, the experience might be generic. Like you said, people want to be treated like people. You want to see the care. You want to see people listening. You want to see them valuing your time and energy. And if someone's just like, oh, here's a generic whatever, like that's probably an indicator of something else, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I would argue that like even if you're sending something generic, right? You're doing like a one-to-many campaign, it's still a step above if you're not doing that at all because you've thought about the prospect or the customer and you've thought about taking that additional step to making them feel valued, right? So I want to acknowledge that. But I will say you can also do this in like one to few campaigns. So recently, I ran a field marketer survival kit and we were targeting a smaller group of field marketers. We sent them this locked box that had things like liquid IV and mints and like things that you really need on a conference floor, right? If you've ever been in a role like that, you understand exactly what that gift is and why it was curated for you or your, people in your role. So it does feel personalized, but it's kind of at scale, right? It wasn't just sent to you, it was sent to, a group of that same persona. So there are ways to do this at scale where you're not having to individually pick out gifts, etc. Where that individualized gifting comes into play is for sales reps, BDRs, AEs that have these prospects going through a sales cycle. It's a great way to capture attention, earn the right to ask for a meeting. And I want to really bold that is earn the right to ask, but also a great way to accelerate deals through the sales cycle.
And yeah, I think you're right. Like, but because even the one to many side of it, like you are still being thoughtful because you're still finding the right gift to send to many. I was more thinking about just like the people like, oh, here's a hat, here's a sticker,
Right.
here's a t-shirt. Like that, when I say generic, that's what I mean. Like
Right.
I see the piñatas, like those are awesome. Like that's where we're not talking
You gotta
about
keep
that
it
here.
fun. Yeah. The piñatas are great. I'll have to send you one. I'll have to send you your own zombie.
I would love one, and mostly just to see my kids try to like swing at it. It looks like a ton of fun. Okay, so is there anything else on the research side of things that stands out to you as important that we need to cover? Or, are we ready to move on to the next step?
I think we're ready to move on to the next step, which is like avoiding bribery and like how do you put all of this together? So I think like the biggest misconception when it comes to gifting is that it's bribery and that it has to be bribery. And we actually preach against that. And I think the way that it kind of clicks because at Sendoso, I do customer trainings. I sit on calls with BDR teams, AE teams, and I say, hey, here's how you do this without being icky, right? Because that is obviously not the intention. You don't want to cross over into ick territory. And a common, I guess, first instinct, right, with gifting is for people when they're writing a sales email to say, hey, in exchange for your time, we'd like to send you X. And of course, that sounds bribey. So we don't want to do that. And instead, we want to use gifting as a relationship building tool to capture attention and earn the right to ask for a meeting. So how do we do that? And it simply is by separating our company's value prop and the send offer within the email. For example, an email could sound something like, hey, noticed company insight. X seems to be your team's focus. Sendoso has helped company and company close that gap with solution. Worth a chat. P.S. Saw that you have 2 kids. Would love to send you a vampire piñata to celebrate the season. Confirm your address here. Right? And then my subject line would be something like 2-word value prop plus vampire piñata. So I'm kind of capturing your attention with the gift, but the gift is not contingent on you giving me your time. The gift offer is in a PS, which boosts reply rates by 33%. And it's not contingent on you doing anything, right? It's simply me offering and showing you that I have done my research on you as a human being.
That's really, really cool. And it's the fact that you're not intermingling them, right? Just to make sure I'm hearing it and understanding, right? You have the ask, you have the gift. They're 2 separate things. And someone could easily just say oh, the piñata sounds great. My kids would love that. Thank you so much. That's incredibly thoughtful. But I'm not actually in the market right now. Let's pick this up in 6 months, or I'll reach out whenever, right? And I'm sure that's the scenario that you're least excited about potentially. But even then, you still use that as an opportunity to build a relationship, right? Because that piñata arrives and those kids freak out and they're happy and excited. Who did that? Katie did that.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say that the human law of reciprocity is a very real thing. So you don't have to make the offer contingent on anything. Humans will naturally want to reciprocate. So what we actually see is that the majority of the time, people aren't taking the gift unless they're willing to give you some of their time, right? But what I have noticed is that I am constantly gifting, right? I'm gifting to a bunch of people in the community, etc. And as a result, I am now top of mind whenever they hear someone who needs a gifting platform or are thinking about it for themselves. So there is something to be said about relationship building, as we all know, and keeping that consistent. So I think there's also value there. And one other thing that I do want to address is, in the PS in that example, I would have included a link, right? Whenever that gift landed, right? So let's say that you confirmed your address, you never responded to me in the email. I still get alerted when it's delivered to your house, which is a beautiful opportunity for further follow-up for me. And another thing that our team does in kind of a different strategy is if you're reaching out to people kind of at scale and you don't want to drain your monthly budget as a rep, you can put, P.S. would love to send you and your kids a holiday treat. Would you prefer X or Y? Let me know. And so at that point, they're having to engage before we're actually sending them anything or, docking from our budget. So there's a bunch of really creative ways to offer up gifts where, again, you're not bribey.
That leads to an interesting question, right? Budgets. There's no hard and fast rule for anything really, but how should people be thinking about a gifting budget, right? Especially if they're in a company that's maybe growing and doesn't have all the money in the world. How have you approached it? How have you recommended others approach it?
Yeah, so we actually have a team internally for this reason to kind of guide our customers through, how much should you be spending per month, et cetera, to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish, right? So it's all kind of goal-based. But, we do have that data, for example, the $50 per gift average that help us to kind of work backwards into those goals. So I would say it really depends. There's no one answer to it. But here at Sendoso, we do have everything from, starter plans to enterprise plans. We can fit anyone's budget now. We used to be kind of a tool reserved for mid-market and enterprise, but we have opened the doors to more SMB orgs because we've seen that more and more companies are wanting to get involved with gifting, especially for, these startups who are wanting to get their brand presence out there. Gifting can be a really beautiful way to do that. So I would say that if someone is interested in understanding the full cost to, reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help them with that.
All right, cool. We will, I'll put that in the description. I don't know. I still don't know what I'm doing. So we'll figure that part out. I mean, because the budget, I think, is like the precursor to everything, right? Where it's like, I want to be relevant. I want to hear people. I want to provide things that resonate. I want to be building these relationships, but I don't know how much money to spend, and I don't know who to ask, so I'm just not going to do it. And
yeah,
it's cool to hear that like there's an understanding of that, and the fact that this kind of thinking like exists, and that you are now providing resources and support for that specifically. And like, without turning this into an ad for Sendoso, I want to say that that's really impressive, because I think also the easy thing to do, especially on the B2B tech side of things and SaaS, right? It's like enterprise. Don't worry about SMB. Don't worry about mid-market. It's all about the enterprise. But there's a lot of value on the SMB side. So it's a $50 number, not like a $50,000 number, or, anything like that. And that there are ways to help.
For sure.
We've done our targeting. We've figured out who we want to go after. We've done our research. We've avoided Creep City. Nobody wants to be in Creep City. I love that so much, by the way. And we figured out how not to make it bribey, which is, I think, really important. Honestly, the thing that didn't occur to me before this conversation, where it's like, in a way, it's like common sense. Like, don't make it a quid pro quo. Don't try to like turn it into something. Like, be genuine.
Right.
But hearing you say it in those words, is like, yeah, don't be bribey. Like, that's literally it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also like, it's easy to say that, right? Like, don't be bribey, etc. But then actually executing on that and figuring out how to word it and how to not be bribey is the hard part. And it took me a while of working here to figure out the kind of nuances of, how to position an email, how to offer these things up. So it's not that obvious in practice. And so I think that that's why it's so important to, if you're going to implement a tool like Sendoso, to really ensure that your team is, really enabled on how to use this properly, or the most effectively, right? Because there are some companies out there who are killing it with paid ads that offer AirPods in exchange for them booking a demo, right? That are really targeted. Like, that stuff works. I think my whole positioning is, for that human to human contact, that needs to be, less bribey, not bribey.
So what happens next, right? Like, you've sent the email. Are you sitting there fingers crossed, or like, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, just like any other, kind of prospecting or marketing email, you're sitting there with your fingers crossed, of course. But we do see an increase in response rates, right, with gifting. So typically we'll get an 18 to 26% reply rate is what we're seeing on our emails that include gifting, which is fantastic. So we're really happy with that. We get those replies, we book those meetings, and like I mentioned, if someone confirms their address for a gift, but maybe they don't reply, which is very rare, we have the opportunity and the alerts, the delivery notifications through Sendoso that allow for that second follow-up. Our AEs are leveraging gifting throughout the sales cycle to loop in additional stakeholders. Like I said, gifting can make your deals close 29% faster. So, there's a ton of different opportunities to leverage gifting and do seasonal campaigns, things like that. My team and I are working on a holiday campaign right now to send one to many. So there's a ton of different ways that all of this comes into play. But at the end of the day, you sit back and you enjoy all the meetings you set.
I'm literally step 4. You know that like meme where it's like step 1, step 2, like is something, step 2 is something else, step 3 is question mark, and then step 4 is profit. This is literally step 4 is profit here.
Step 4 is
you did
profit,
it. Like, you're living the meme.
I love it.
Let me ask you real quick then on how do you, and I know this goes back to targeting a little bit, but like, how do you decide what is one to many, what is one to few, and what is one to one? Like if I'm sitting there thinking about starting up a gifting strategy, like how do I think about those three things?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, obviously, there's like a million different ways to do this, right? I think when I think about one to many, intent is usually what I like to capitalize on. So, who are the people in the best accounts that are showing the highest level of intent? Let me take those top 50 and try to convert them to meeting. Or it can be, a one to few campaign where I say, okay, we're going to invest X amount on this one to few. We're going to engage our AEs and say, hey, which of your accounts are you most wanting to get after? Which is showing the most promise? Give me 3 contacts from each of the AEs and I'll put them in this one to few campaign. Or you can do that with your BDR team, right? And then the one-to-ones, right? That's just kind of like your daily workflow with the BDRs. We infuse gifting into everything we do. We drink our own champagne, of course. But when it comes to, for example, for Thanksgiving, we're considering running a virtual experience. Sendoso can also supply virtual experiences. So I'm thinking about organizing a virtual charcuterie board making class. And for that, right, I would want to focus on a specific niche industry. I want to be speaking their language. I want to, have an open discussion about what they are dealing with, maybe what some pain points are, so that I can find commonalities and also use that as a way for me to gain information to, improve our outreach to that niche industry, but to also, tailor the Sendoso pitch to them throughout that live event. So there's different commonalities, I think, for like different situations that you need to consider.
That's really cool. It sounds like, in a way, it's, one to one is more direct. Like one to few is almost like maybe even that like ABM kind of route where you have like very specific targets and focus. And one to many is, it's not pray and spray by any means, because I mean, no one's got money for that. But it is more kind of general in terms of like, this is my overall target audience and how I'm trying to approach them.
Yeah, and like these are the people that are showing the most interest, or whatever, they are almost at that line. Let me do something to push them over, right? That's like kind of universal, but feels super relevant because of maybe it's the time of the year, right? So like a holiday campaign, sending a happy holidays kit with some, branded items within it. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a ton of different ways to go about this. And I think it all comes back to, what are your goals, right? Like, what are you trying to achieve beyond just like setting more meetings or closing more deals? Like where is your team seeing success historically, and how can we capitalize on that success and make it even more successful by layering and gifting? A way that a lot of companies do this is by integrations. So for deal acceleration, for example, right, we integrate with outreach, and at a certain stage in the deal cycle, you can have a gift trigger to your prospect or to your main point of contact. And maybe that's something that's, reiterating your ROI or the value, use cases, et cetera. And it's like a kit with a nice gift to help push that deal along. So there's ways to set up that automation as well that can be really helpful and kind of work in the background, which we see a lot.
I love that. I'm a big systems guy, big ops guy, big automation guy. So speaking my language.
You would love it.
I'm like super pumped to check it out.
Yeah.
What's next, right? Like, and I know this is a relatively broad question. We've talked about the holidays, we've talked about Thanksgiving, but like, as you think about this gift giving process, where do you want to take it next? Or where, if people are paying attention, what should they be thinking about and looking at to see where you're going to implement it next?
This is really interesting. And we've done several like webinars and kind of talks about this, but we leverage Clay at Sendoso, and we recently released our Smart Send feature, which is an AI gift recommendation engine. So it scrapes the internet, it finds what someone's hobbies are and suggests relevant gifts. So we are actually able to plug that API into Clay now, which is incredibly effective and just so much fun. And we're running experiments. So I am very excited about this. I may geek out about this for a minute, but
Please.
I recently ran a report, all of our customers, and I was very frustrated at the amount of industry data that I was able to capture. So I'm sure we're all, familiar with NAICS codes, which are most companies are like software development. That doesn't tell me anything about who they are, what they sell, like what their priorities are. And I was getting so frustrated because I was dealing with this surface level data. So we took that report, we manually went through it, our customers, and did niche industries. It took forever. But then we broke that down into pie graphs and we're able to see, okay, which industries make up the most of our customer base. And then we also took it a step further and which ones are bringing in the highest ACVs. And some of these industries would really surprise you because they surprised me. So now we're going to be able to take, because I have a very small BDR team. I don't need them focused on experimentation. I need them focused on our high intent, high priority accounts. So Clay is giving me the opportunity to now go experiment at scale and figure out which of these niche industries should we maybe focus a little more on. And we're able to layer in personalized gifting into these automated emails. We've been able to train the AI, which takes a lot. It takes a lot of prompts. I will say AI can go very badly if you don't take the time to do that. So now we're able to personalize at scale to all these different industries and collect the data at scale, which is very exciting. And I've been nerding out about it. So thanks for letting me rant for a second.
Grant, that was amazing. That's honestly, it's outrageous and really, really cool. And honestly, like I'm excited now to see the data on the other side of this as well, in terms of like what the separate like niches and groupings, like what works and what doesn't work. And there's so much opportunity with gifting, I feel like, and there's so much to learn. And just like from a regional standpoint, from a vertical standpoint, from an industry standpoint, from a role standpoint, like everyone's going to appreciate different things. But I love that you're taking the time to understand who they are, understand what they value and what's important to them, and then figure out how to be even smarter about it. Because research takes a lot of time, like you said, right? It's especially like if you're building your own models and you're building your own like AI engines, like that's a ton of work. Mm-hmm. When you layer that in with something else, with like gifting, which needs to be thoughtful and also takes a ton of work, like I don't know, like a ton squared is a lot more math than I want to do right now, but it's a lot to consider. So I'm glad you and the team are doing the work and fighting the good fight here.
Yeah. And I mean, it does, historically, it has taken a lot of time to go do that research. But like I said, and like you said, Smart Send and features like that have AI, kind of enhancing the process for you and making that research a hell of a lot easier. Anything that we can do to make it easier to sell and humanize the sale, right? I think is our mission and ultimately what we want to accomplish in helping people build actual deeper relationships, right? And kind of get back to that human side of business that, perhaps some people are leaning a little bit too far away from today.
On that note, I think, we've hit the beats. We've knocked the process out here. I'm really excited about what's next. Katie, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for walking us through how you give gifts and how you think about a gifting strategy. I know I've taken a ton away from this. I hope others will as well. Really appreciate it.
Bye.